In this video, I'll be sharing with you the best VS Code features that are guaranteed to make you a more efficient developer. I'll be walking you through global and workspace settings, creating custom tasks to automate workflows, terminal customizations, life-saving keyboard shortcuts, popular extensions, and much, much more. Now, by the end of this video, I guarantee that you will have learned something about VS Code and discovered some new features that will save you time. Now, to guarantee that, I've actually teamed up with Microsoft, who has sponsored this video. Now, as many of you know, Microsoft actually owns VS Code, GitHub, and many other developer tools, and they helped me come up with the outline for this video. Now, in addition to this video, we're going to be providing a 45-minute long webinar on May 9th as a part of the Developer Digital Meetup Tour. This webinar will go into much more depth on how to use VS Code and GitHub like a professional, and of course, it will also include a live Q&A session. To sign up for the webinar, go to aka.ms/techwithtim to learn more about VS Code and GitHub workflows. If you're watching this video after May 9th, then you can still access the recording from the same link, aka.ms/techwithtim. It will also be linked in the description. With that said, let's go ahead and get into the video. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, the first section I want to dive into here is settings and customization. Obviously, when you're working in any kind of code editor or coding environment, you want to customize this to your liking and make sure everything is set up nicely so that you can have the maximum efficiency and even just pleasure when you're using the code editor. So in VS Code, obviously, there is unlimited customization, and the way you can get to the settings menu that I'm on right now is you can go to the gear, and then you can click on settings. Alternatively, you can open this by hitting Control plus comma or Command plus comma, depending on the operating system that you're on. So from here, notice that we have two settings categories. We have user and workspace settings. Now, the user settings are your global settings, and the workspace setting is specific to a folder or a workspace that you're working in. Now, your user settings are going to be stored in a settings.json file. Notice here when I hover, it shows me the location of that settings.json file. And if I want to actually open up that file, I can hit Control-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P. This toggles the command palette for you. And then I can go Open, Settings, and then JSON. So Open Default Settings JSON, or Open User Settings, or Open Workspace Settings. You can pick what you want. So I'll open the user settings with JSON. And notice here that I have all of the available settings, or at least the ones that I have modified. Inside of here, I can do some custom settings. I can change some stuff that I may not be able to change from this menu, but for 90% of the time, it's fine to just work in here. But I just wanted to show you, we have this JSON file. You can go in here, you'll have IntelliSense when you're writing different settings, and you can do some specific customization you may not be able to do inside of this file. Now, for the workspace settings, this is going to be a settings.json file inside of a .vscode folder. I'm going to show this to you in a second, but this is going to live inside of the workspace or the project that you have open, and these settings are automatically going to override your user or global settings. So it goes user or global, then you have your workspace, and of course you have all the default settings, and these two settings would override any of the default settings as well. Okay, so in terms of a few settings that you may want to change right away, I like changing the editor font size. Now, I like to have my font size nice and large, so I usually put this at about 22. And then if I want to zoom in and out the window, what I can do is hit Control plus or Control minus. So you'll see quite a bit when I'm working in tutorials. I'll zoom kind of the whole VS Code window in quite a bit, just so you guys can read everything that I'm doing. However, sometimes I want to zoom stuff in without actually, say, affecting all of these icons or affecting the entire UI. In that case, I'll just make the font size larger, and that's what's going to affect the actual size of the font in my code editor. So that affects that, and then I can zoom that in and out. So just distinguish the difference there. When you zoom in and out, it does the entire window, whereas when you change the font size, it's just the font size for your actual code editing files. All right, so next thing that you'll probably want to change here is your theme. Now, there's a few ways to do this. Of course, you can do it from the settings. You can go to theme, and then you can select the theme that you want. Personally, I like to use Monokai. A lot of you guys ask me about my theme. This is the one that I use. I've used it pretty much forever. You can also install additional themes to VS Code through different extensions, or you can hit Control-Shift-P to open the command palette. Type in theme, and then you can select the theme that you want. And again, you can kind of customize these themes too. I won't get into that right now. Okay, that's pretty much it for your global settings. Now, I just want to show you a few more advanced uses related to settings that you may not know about. So you can actually toggle settings for specific languages and using specific filters. So for example, let's say I want to search for all of the settings that I've actually modified. What I can do is use a tag, or kind of a filter, sorry, which starts with the @ symbol, and then I can type modified, and this is going to give me a list of all of the settings that I've actually changed here in Visual Studio Code. Okay, so that's an example of a filter. Maybe I want to look at all of the settings related to an extension. Well, of course, I could just do it in the extensions menu, or I could type in a filter. So I could do extension, so ext, colon, and then ms, and then Python, and then .python, and it shows me all of these settings. Now, maybe I want to look at all the ones I modified. There you go. I can now see the settings I've modified here. So just showing you, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do that you may not know about, and you can kind of plug in these filters. All right, last thing I'll show you here with settings is a custom setting that kind of is cool and shows you the power of using the settings.json file. So I'm going to go Control-Shift-P. I'm going to open my settings.json, okay? And I'm just going to go in here to the very bottom, and I'm going to paste this setting. Workbench color customizations, okay? Editor line number, foreground, and then I change the color. So this is an example of something you'd only be able to modify from within the settings.json file. And look, I can change the color of kind of, what do you call it? These line numbers, right? Or whatever's popping up. So you can do all kinds of customizations like that. Just wanted to show you kind of the power of this file and I don't know, maybe some hidden information you may not have known about. All right, so now we're going to dive into our workspace settings. Now, if you want to create custom workspace settings, you can just go in here and start changing stuff. So let me go to workspace. And for example, I can make this 22. When I do that, notice that you're going to see a .VSCode folder pop up, and then you're going to have a settings.json file inside of here. Now, this is any changes you've made in the current workspace. Now, this is great because, for example, if you had some tasks or some commands or some specific settings related to extensions that you wanted everyone in maybe your organization to have, you could actually commit this file to GitHub, and then people could pull that file down and automatically have those settings applied to their workspace. Now, oftentimes you do want to omit this from your GitHub commits, depending on what you're doing. But in my case, if I have a private repository just for me, I may upload my .VSCode folder so then I can just pull it down on another computer and automatically get the same settings. So you put them inside of here, settings.json. Now I'll show you, right, that if I change the workbench color here to be all of this, okay, that's great. That's inside of this, workspace. Now what I can do is I can open up a new workspace. Let's go File, Open Folder. Let me just go here to Blockchain Expert, my new course. You guys should check it out from the link in the description. And notice here that if I open up a file, my line numbers are not a different color because that VS Code setting, that workspace setting, was only applied to the previous workspace. Okay, so let's go back. Open recent, and we will open our tutorial. Okay, so that was really all I had for workspace settings. Just wanted to show you kind of how to configure those using this .VSCode folder and then settings.json. All right, continuing now, we are going to look at tasks. Now, a task is essentially a command that you can run from Visual Studio Code that's going to automate some kind of workflow. Now, tasks can be automatically populated or detected by VS Code, or you can write them manually. So I'll show you both instances. So right now, I just have a very basic NPM project. This is actually just the boilerplate you get when you create a React application. So I just ran npx create React app, and you can see I have kind of an NPM project in my package.json. I have start, build, test, etc. Okay. Now, what I can actually do from VS Code is I can open up the build scripts. Now, the way to do that is to hit Control, Shift, and then B as in build, or Command, Shift, B. Now, notice when I do this, that it actually brings up all of the build tasks that I can possibly run. In this case, it's detecting the npm build app task from my package.json. So already you can probably see how that's fairly powerful because now you don't actually have to go to your terminal to run a command. If it's auto-detected by VS Code, you can just run it directly in Visual Studio Code. Now, alternatively, there's a lot of other tasks that you can look at. So you can hit Control-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P to open up the command palette. You can type tasks, and then you have a ton of option here. So you can do open user task, configure default build task, configure task, manage automatic task, etc. And you could run a task. Let's go run task. Now, when you go here, it shows you a bunch of tasks that are kind of automatically populated by VS Code. I can go into npm, and then I can run any of these. So npm install, npm eject, etc. So let's go npm install, and then notice that it starts actually executing this task, and it has this in a special task terminal. Okay, so I'm just going to close this for now because we don't need that. I just wanted to show you that this is a thing in VS Code. Many people don't actually know about that. Now, beyond just auto-detecting tasks, we can create our own custom tasks. Now, there is documentation on how to do this, so I'll link it in the description. For now, I'll just share with you kind of a basic task. So what I can do is create a .vscode folder, just like the folder where I had my settings.json file in. Now, in here, I can go to tasks.json, and I can put custom workspace tasks. So just as a quick example here, I'll paste in a task that just comes directly from the Microsoft documentation. You can see that we have the version of the task, or the version of this task's file, and then we have an array or a list of all of the tasks. In this case, we have one task. The label for this is to run tests. The type is shell. This is the command that we're going to run. And then we could change the command for Windows, Mac, Linux, etc. in case it was slightly different. We have the group, and then we can present this based on specific conditions. So I won't get into all the syntax. Again, the URL is here if you want to see how exactly to kind of format this and create different tasks. But now that we have this task, I can go Command-Shift-P to open the command palette. I can go task like this, and then run task, and then what I can do is use the run tests task, right? So notice that one is right here. Now, it's not going to work because I don't actually have this script defined, but if I did, then it would run that script. Okay, so let me close this task. Notice it also highlights in red telling me that this was unsuccessful. Okay, that's all you need to know about tasks. Very useful feature. Consider adding it when you have larger projects and scripts that potentially multiple users are going to be running, maybe based on a GitHub project or some code base that you're working on. All right, so continuing here, I'm going to share with you a few useful features related to terminals that you may not know about, or maybe you do, but you just don't use them. So oftentimes when I'm working on a project, I find myself having a ton of different terminals. Now, it's useful that they kind of get organized on the right-hand side here, but when they're all just named CMD, or they give me kind of a vague description, oftentimes I find myself like clicking through all of these to try to find what it is that I'm looking for. Now, obviously, VS Code has thought of a better way, and this involves renaming and customizing your terminals. So what you can actually do when you have multiple terminals like this is you can right-click them. So let's right-click, and you can change the color, the icon, or the name. So if I go here and I rename, I could rename this to, say, API, and then I could go and I could change the color, and maybe I make this yellow. Okay, so already much clearer. I understand what is being run in this terminal. Now, of course, you can create different types of terminals. So you can have PowerShell, Git Bash, JavaScript debug, etc. And you can actually split terminals as well. So in this case, maybe I go to split terminal, or I would have pressed the little split button there. And now I have two terminals, and I can kind of change the sizes. This is useful if you want to view two things at the exact same time. Now, another thing you can do with terminals that you may not have seen is you can actually view them in the standard kind of code editing area. The way to do that is right-click on a terminal, and then go to move terminal to editor area. Now you get the terminal up here, and now you can kind of split them as you would regular windows and view terminals at the bottom while you're viewing a terminal window here. Now continuing here, of course, I could view another one in the editor area. So there you go. And now I have two, and then I could kind of split these and do what I want with them, as I please. So that pretty much covers everything I need to go through related to terminals. I'll quickly mention that, of course, you can change the default terminal as well by going here and going configure terminal settings. You can also set up profiles for your terminals. And if you want a quick way to toggle the terminal window, then you can do control backtick, or command backtick, okay? That's going to toggle the terminal open and close. You also, of course, can just drag from the bottom of the screen like this, and there should be a command palette command to open the terminal. So open new terminal, and oh, that actually opens a separate terminal. But there you go. I guess you know how that works now too. All right, now we move on to the next section in the video, which is going to be on some useful keyboard shortcuts. Now, VS Code obviously has a ton of shortcuts. You can view all of these and you can customize these to be whatever you like. I find the defaults pretty useful, and I usually just like to keep the defaults because they're consistent with some other editors, so I don't have to kind of remember to constantly change them. Regardless, I'm going to show you a bunch of keyboard shortcuts here. I will put them up on the screen, and I, of course, will describe what they do. We're going to start with some basic ones and then get into some more advanced, kind of nuanced and useful ones. So let's start with command palette. in VS Code, you need to know how to open the command palette. That's going to be Control-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P. Pretty much whenever I say Control from now on, if you're on Mac, then you're going to be using Command, okay? So to open the command palette, there you go. And then here we can type any command that we want. Now, what's interesting is that if you want to actually search for a file, what you can do is just hit backspace here. And now when you don't have this greater than sign, you're able to actually do a file search. So I can do, for example, app.css, and then I can search for the file and get into that. Very useful trick, especially if you have a larger code base. Now, if you just want to open up that file search, you can hit Control-P. So just doing Control-P, not having the shift, is going to open up the file search like we just showed you. But again, to get back to command, you just add that symbol there. Okay, so that is the first shortcut. Next shortcut is to toggle this sidebar here. So a lot of times when I'm coding, this can kind of get in the way. It's a bit annoying. So what I like to do is hit Control-B, B as in basket, and that's going to open and close this sidebar. Sorry, it's going to toggle it. All right, there you go. Now, next is not really a shortcut. Well, there is a shortcut for it, but I don't remember what this is. This is Zen mode. So if you open up the command palette and then you type in Zen mode, you can toggle this, and this is going to bring you into an editor that has no icons, no distractions, and just the code. Sometimes for recording, I like to have this code editor. I find it's kind of cleaner when you guys are following along. Now, to get out of that, I can just hit Control-Shift-P again. Okay, and then I can toggle Zen mode, and it brings me outside. All right, next we are going to look at adding a cursor to all of our matching selections. Now, this is a little bit of a kind of complicated keyboard shortcut, but it's very useful, especially in HTML. So let's say we have a bunch of p tags here, and we want to modify the content of all of these. Well, there's a few ways to go about doing this. Maybe I actually want to change all of these tags to be, say, an H1 tag. What I can do is I can select this, and then I can hit Control-Shift and then L or Command-Shift-L, and notice it's going to select all of the tags that match this. So now I've selected all of these, and I can kind of tab inside of here, and I can change these tags to be whatever I want. So I could change these to be an H1. Okay, now I'm done with that. I hit Escape. Now I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to select my closing p tag here. So let's select the whole thing, and we're going to hit Control-Shift-L. And then again, I can go here and I can change this to an ending H1 tag. And now I've modified all of my H1 tags using a few keystrokes as opposed to many more if I were going to change all of them kind of at once. Now, of course, you could use find and replace, but sometimes you want to just do it quickly in the code editor. In that case, you're going to use Control-Shift-L or Command-Shift-L. All right, moving on, the next command is actually similar to this one, and this is to select all of the content on a single line. So a lot of times you want to select the entire line. There's a few different ways to go about doing this, but the way that I like to use is Control-L or Command-L. Notice it automatically puts your cursor on the next line, by the way, and this is going to select the entire line. Of course, then you could change that, you could copy it, you could do whatever you want with that. So that's going to be Command-L or Control-L. That just selects the entire line that you're on. Again, that's kind of how it looks, right? Okay. Next command that we have is go to line. Now, this can be useful if you're in a very large code file. Say you got an editor, or say you got an error, sorry, and it said, hey, you know, there's a mistake on line 43, or there's an error here. What you could do is hit Control-G or Command-G, and then you can go to whatever line you want. So if I want to go to line, say, 27, then it brings me directly to line 27. If I want to go to line 1, it brings me to line 1. Unfortunately, my file is not quite large enough to show the usefulness of this. Maybe I have a larger file in here. It doesn't look like I do. Okay, here we go. Let's go Command-G. Let's go to line 39, and then it brings me to that line. All right, so we're back inside of our app file now, and I'm going to show you another shortcut, which is related to commenting a line. Now, this is very useful when you want to toggle comments. So maybe something is commented, you want to uncomment it, or you want to uncomment multiple lines at a time. This is what you'd use. So let's just create a variable. We'll say, if we can spell const correctly, const hello is equal to 1. And then what I'm going to do on this line here, it doesn't matter if the whole line's selected, my cursor just has to be here. I'm going to hit Control and then the / on my keyboard, or Command and the / on my keyboard. That's going to comment out the whole line. Now, to toggle this, I just keep hitting it, right? It's going to remove the comment or add it. So very useful if you have, say, a few lines, you want to comment all of them, select, and then you can comment, and then you can toggle the comment. Of course, you could do a block comment, but this is pretty useful. Now, it's going to automatically change the comment type based on the language that you're working in. If I was in Python, then it would obviously change it to the pound symbol. Now, let's say I wanted to comment out maybe a tag in here. Well, the comment for this is slightly different. So if I hit Control//, notice it gives me the correct style of comment. Whereas if I just tried to do a // here, that's not going to work, right? Okay, so there you go. That is toggling your comments. All right, next shortcut is one that I always forget, but that is so useful, and this is to move a line up or down. So especially in HTML, maybe I have my image here and I want to move this down in the file. Rather than copying it and kind of pasting it, which I can do, but that typically requires me go to my mouse, what I can do is select this line or just put my cursor here, and then I can use Option or Alt. So if you're on Mac, you're going to use Option. If you're on Windows or Linux, you're going to use Alt. And I'm going to hold that, and then I'm just going to use my arrow keys and go up and down. This allows me to now move this all around the file. Again, that's going to be holding Alt or holding Option, depending on the operating system that you're on. Okay, very useful. Next shortcut that I have, another very useful one, is to duplicate a line. Now, to duplicate a line, you're going to hit Option or Alt plus the Shift key, and then you're going to use the up or down arrow key. So in this case, I'm on line 8. I'm going to hit Shift Alt because I'm on Windows, and then down, that's going to copy the line down. Okay, now if I go here, so I'm on this image tag and I hit Shift Alt up, then it's actually going to copy the line upwards. Now I know this seems a bit weird because these are all image tags here, but let me show you again. If I go here, let's go to this A tag, and I hit Shift Alt up, notice it copies that line upwards. Okay, now let's get rid of that. Now, if I select this whole thing and I hit Shift Alt up, it's going to select the whole thing and copy that up. If I go down, then it's going to copy it down. Okay, so very useful. Again, that's going to be Shift Alt or Shift Option. All right, and now we move on to the last notable shortcut, which is a multi-line edit. I use this one all the time. Now, the way this works is you are going to hit Control and then Alt or Control and Option, and then you're just going to move your cursor up or down. Okay, now this allows you to edit multiple things at a time. So notice here that my cursors are in multiple locations and I can, well, edit all of these. Okay, now let me get out of this. Let's do the same thing over here. So I'm going to go Control Alt, okay, and then I can go up and down, and I can kind of move these around and do whatever I want with these different cursors and edit multiple lines at the exact same time. So depending on the type of file you have and what you're working on, this can be extremely useful. Again, this is going to be Control Alt or Control Option, depending on your operating system. All right, so to start wrapping up the video here, I'm just going to mention to you a few useful extensions that I personally use. You can see that I have a ton of extensions here. So if you want to kind of pause, you can see all the ones that I use. But the main ones that I want to mention here are Code Spell Checker. So I'm going to go Code Spell. You can see I have that here. By the way, I got to this page by clicking on this icon right here, which is extensions, also Control-Shift-X. Code Spell Checker, very useful. I think that's straightforward what that does. Another one I like is Prettier, which is right here. This automatically formats your code. Of course, I have the Python extension installed and any other language specific extension that I'm using. So if I'm using JavaScript, I install that extension. And then another extension that I like is Git Lens. Now, what this does is actually tell you the commit message related to specific files. So I think I can kind of demo this. If I go back to app.js, notice here it says 26 minutes ago, initialize project using this. Now, the reason I like this is so I can see if I changed a line or if someone else changed a line, I can view the specific commit. And then I can kind of say, hey, who messed this up? Or did I make this mistake? Or what's going on here? And I can ask the author of that line. Just kind of saves a bit of time and makes everything really clear when I'm working in a GitHub repository. Now, of course, there is built-in GitHub integration here for VS Code. So I'm sure many of you know how to use this. I won't go through this extension. It's already in VS Code. You don't need to install it. And you can kind of see all your changes. You can look at the side-by-side, etc. And then if you're working with something like Azure, say you're deploying a web service or you're connecting to a database, there's all kinds of Azure extensions that you can install related to the different Azure services. So I don't have any right now, but if I was working with, say, an Azure database or Azure storage, I would, of course, install these extensions, and then I would be able to connect directly to those instances and pretty much do everything I need to from VS Code. Alright, so with that said, I'm going to start wrapping up the video here. If you want to learn more about VS Code, GitHub, GitHub Actions, and more advanced developer workflows, then make sure to attend the webinar that we are doing on May 9th as a part of the Developer Digital Meetup Tour. This webinar will be in collaboration with Microsoft, and of course it will include a live Q&A session. If you want to be a part of that, make sure you go to the link aka.ms/techwithtim and register for the webinar. It will also be linked in the description. With that said, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in another YouTube video.